You know that feeling when you're watching a movie and it feels like it's teaching you how to watch it? Like beyond the story, there's this invisible system that's shaping what you look at, what you care about, and even what you want. Well, today we're going to pull back that curtain. We're going to look right at the system itself.
The core idea we're digging into is called the Phantomoperand. And look, it's not some grand conspiracy. It's what the source calls an incentive problem. It's actually pretty simple. Cinema, like any medium, figures out what kind of looking gets a reaction, what pays off emotionally for the audience. And once it finds that sweet spot, the whole system starts to reward and repeat the filmmaking tricks that trigger that specific way of looking. And in the process, it's training us.
So, here's our game plan. First, we're going to define our key terms so we're all on the same page. Then, we'll take a trip through film history, all the way from the 1920s to the post-war era, to see how this system was built, how it was perfected, and eventually, how filmmakers started to question it from the inside. And we'll wrap up by asking what all this means for us right now. Okay, so to really understand how this all works, we need a shared vocabulary. Let's break down the three critical tools we're going to use to take these films apart. First, you've got the phantom operand itself. That's the reward system we just talked about. Second is a concept called estrangement. This is when a film does something weird, something jarring that snaps you out of just watching the story and makes you suddenly aware of the system at play. And third, the cut. And this is so much more than just an edit. Think of it as a tool that draws boundaries, that partitions reality and controls what you are and are not allowed to see. All right, let's put these tools to work. We're starting way back in 1920 with The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. It's a classic of German expressionism, and it's a film where the system's manipulation is anything but subtle. It's right there on the surface. See, in The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, the film doesn't even try to hide its power over you. The whole point is to show you a world that is visibly, obviously authored. The filmmaking itself, the wild sets, the crazy angles, what the source calls the apparatus of stylization, that's the real star of the show. Now, this is so interesting because it totally flips our role as the audience. Caligari doesn't give us some glamorous movie star to just sit back and admire. Nope. Instead, its tilted, nightmarish sets and its painted-on shadows make us work. Our desire isn't just to passively consume something pretty. It's to actively decipher this bizarre, hostile world the film throws at us. So here's the breakdown. At this early stage, the Phantomoperand is still kind of experimental. The film is literally testing out how to control our gaze. It does this with really obvious estrangement. I mean, those sets and shadows make the simple act of seeing feel strange, almost like a chore. And the cut? It isn't just for pacing. It's epistemic, which means it's about knowledge. It constantly messes with reality, never letting us get comfortable. So, Caligari showed us perception as a form of coercion, right out in the open. But as cinema grew up, the methods of control got way more sophisticated. Estrangement wouldn't come from painted shadows anymore. Instead, it would come from the friction of social class, from judging someone's taste, and from that slow, creaking realization that social norms are their own kind of machine. And that shift, that move towards subtle control, brings us to our next phase. Let's jump ahead to 1937's Stella Dallas, a classic Hollywood melodrama where the phantom operandin learns to manipulate us, not with weird visuals, but with something we all understand: social judgment. This film isn't really about raw desire. It's about something way more complex. It trains us, the audience, to become expert readers of social cues. We get rewarded for judging Stella's clothes, her posture, her taste, and for connecting all of that to her moral worth. The system isn't selling sex appeal. It's selling us the skill of social legibility. But this is where the film pulls a fast one on us. We're trained to judge Stella, but then we're also forced to feel the crushing emotional cost of that judgment for her. And in that moment of empathy, that's when the estrangement kicks in. We suddenly see the social norm not as this natural, obvious way things should be, but as a cruel, grinding machine. So in this film, the phantom operand rewards us for looking with a critical, judgmental eye. The estrangement is that powerful friction between those harsh social rules and our actual feelings for the character. And the cuts, they become social walls. Doors and windows aren't just parts of the set. They are hard boundaries that decide who belongs and who gets shut out. So the system evolves from social judgment to something else. Now we turn to genre films, and specifically to Alfred Hitchcock's 1954 masterpiece, which perfects the phantom operand by making the act of spying feel like pure, unadulterated entertainment. I mean, with Rear Window, there's no hiding what's going on. The entire film is about the act of looking. Our pleasure as viewers becomes completely 100% identical to the main character's surveillance of his neighbors. We are literally put in the position of the voyeur, and we are absolutely trained to love it. Now this is one of the system's most brilliant, most devious moves. Rear Window is, on one level, a critique of voyeurism. But here's the trick. It makes that critique fun. It makes us feel smart for noticing the commentary, which turns the critique itself into just another product to be enjoyed. The Phantomoperand learns how to sell its own exposure back to us.
Let's just quickly break this down. The Phantomoperand explicitly rewards voyeurism. It becomes the source of our pleasure and our feeling of control. The estrangement comes from the film's total self-awareness. We know we're watching a little movie inside the movie, which makes us totally complicit. And the cut is architectural. By limiting our view and shifting it from window to window, the film perfectly manufactures and directs our desire.
But then, after World War II, something started to change. A new wave of filmmakers started to pick up the system's own tools and use them to question the entire apparatus of cinema itself. The gaze, for the first time, really began to turn inward. You see this incredible cluster of films in the decade after the war that are just remarkably self-aware. You've got the shattered narrative of the killers, the deconstruction of the Western hero and the searchers. It was like cinema was finally beginning to diagnose its own power. And what's so fascinating is how these films use the system's tools against itself. A movie like The Searchers uses the myth of the hero to show you its violent, ugly core. Hitchcock's The Wrong Man takes our voyeurism and points it away from glamorous crime and towards the slow, terrifying horror of bureaucracy. Even a romance like Sabrina shows that high-class elegance isn't natural, it's manufactured. It's a form of training. So we've traced this whole system from its raw, clumsy beginnings all the way to its self-critical phase. But what's the big takeaway here? Why does this little piece of film history matter right now? Well, because the Phantomoperand never went away. It just evolved. That same system of incentives that learned how to shape our gaze in a dark movie theater has become exponentially more powerful and sophisticated in the age of social media, targeted ads, and those algorithmically curated feeds. The apparatus isn't just in the cinema anymore. It's everywhere. And so the final question is really for you. This system for training our attention, for rewarding certain kinds of looking, was perfected in the movies. Now that you have the language and the tools to see it, where do you notice the Phantomoperand at work in your own life?